1 after 12, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'm pleased to introduce Matt Krug. Matt is he's a state specialized agent in food science. He's based at the U.S. Southwest Florida Research and Education Center. He was educated at Kansas State for both his master's and bachelor's degrees. His extension programs are focused on food safety regulations for food entrepreneurs, farms, and food processing facilities. And today he's going to give a talk on the overview of food regulations in Florida. And, as Matt is presenting, if you have questions, you can go ahead and type those in the chat. And then at the end, we'll read those off the chat too for our Q&A session. So with that, Matt, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Just a minute while I shift my mouse and clicker around. There we go. Okay. So as Jason said, I work for the University of Florida as a extension statewide agent with a broad title of food science, but really that's food safety and regulation. And we do a lot of various workshops around those subjects. And really that's my extension objectives, is to increase clientele knowledge on, number one, food safety and the regulation that they are dealing with, so we can point them in the right direction. I'm also pretty heavily involved with what I'll call shared kitchens as a group word. So down in my area in Immokalee, there's what they call an accelerator. There's other kitchens called incubators. They're all pretty similar in nature, but basically places where entrepreneurs can come in and rent space and kind of launch their food businesses and get them off the ground, or figure out that they don't want to do that anymore and save some money in the meantime. All of those things are success stories to me in extension. But a month or two ago, we were at FAP, we were trying to figure out subjects for this. And I know there were some requests to hear about the food code, some other requests to hear about regulations. So there's a lot we can talk about in there. We have a short amount of time, so I will breeze through it. But just a few things. Again, I work for the university, so this is coming from my perspective as someone who helps food entrepreneurs. So I don't work for one of the agencies. I think there's some people on this call that do. I saw the attendee list, and so they'll probably be more well versed for their particular agency than myself. But from my perspective, that's what it looks like. And if there's someone on here that works it from a different angle in there and wants to share what their perspective is or their experience, that's how I learn, and that's how we all learn. So I think it'd be good to facilitate discussion. But with that, we'll get into it. If I can advance, there we go. So again, a lot of times I meet these clienteles and try to figure out where we're going to point them in the right direction. So it starts with figuring out their type of business and what they're working with and how can we move them forward. So the next few slides, kind of how I break it down. And so it starts with some categories about how I consider our food businesses. So if you are just a farm at the farm level who is not processing food products or processing your produce, so if it's being grown, harvested, and packed, whatever else, but is not going to go on to further processing, not going to be juiced or undergo some sort of kill step or used in some other way or cut up, it's a pretty straightforward definition of a farm, and we'll show that here in a minute. Then we have our center category there, which is at home, and that's basically cottage food. And something I didn't know much about when I started my job, and have kind of had by force learned much more about it and figured out what some of those folks have to do and how that works. But again, that's its own category because it's kind of separate from what's regulated, because it's not undergoing inspection. So we'll touch on that here in a minute. And then our right side, that's really where this talk is going, is the commercial side. So that's anywhere from the retail to wholesale food processing. So starting with our restaurants, caterers, those other smaller type food businesses, all the way up to our major food processing facilities that do billions of dollars. So that all falls in this web that starts to turn into a complex web of commercial, but we'll end up there eventually. But yeah, first let's cover the regulation, or these first two buckets. Okay, so this one's pretty straightforward. And another thing I should add, this whole talk is regulation. So depending on what you work with, your business may also have buyer requirements, third-party audits. Totally fair. That happens all the time, and most people are dealing with those as well. What I'm going through is strictly from the regulatory side, coming from the state or federal agencies. So just clarifying that to avoid confusion. So if you are a farm from the regulatory side, you have to follow the produce safety rule, which ultimately says you are growing, packing, harvesting, packing, and or holding fresh produce. Again, this would be if you are not going to process it further. So there's a whole list of things that would be considered rarely to consumed raw that would be exempt from this particular regulation. Furthermore, if you have sales less than $25,000 of annual sales of that particular types of produce covered under the rule, you would also be exempt. So that's adjusted for inflation. So it's $29,000-ish in 2023, I believe, is the last figure I saw, rather than 25,000. And this came about as part of the Food Safety Modernization Act about in the last decade. Came about during the Obama administration. These rules have now come more into play in the last 5-6 years, and it has kind of just added another layer there again from the federal level. So if that was you, if you're a farm starting out, in that scenario, you would have to come to the Produce Safety Alliance Grower Training, have somebody be certified in that, which is offered by us at UF quite often, and do anything you need to meet that rule. But let's keep moving and cover that cottage food bucket. And so this one's quite interesting. When I started my job back in 2017, I think initially the gross sales limit here for cottage food was $15,000, 15. So quite a bit less. And then it was transitioning to about $50,000 annually. And that was the new rule from 2017 until 2021. And then back in 2021, it switched to $250,000 annually due to the Home Sweet Home Act that you've heard of. So again, this is food processing in the home kitchen. So the way I think about it, the way my brain works, it is a law, but it's almost an exemption because it's exempting you from inspection rather. Like you still need to follow these rules, but ultimately, unless you have a complaint or some other issue where FDACS would have the authority to come to your facility or to your home and investigate, then you would not be an inspected facility. So that, as a food safety person, when it goes to $250,000 annual sales, that I thought that was quite interesting. That's good. You can have a $250,000 operation running out of your house each year, which seems almost impossible. So maybe that's where they made it that high, was because they don't think anyone will actually reach it. But I know some people will probably try. But ultimately, with cottage foods, there's a limited list of allowed foods. So baked goods, drier products, fruit, jellies, things that don't require a time and temperature control for safety would fall on that list. And so you can read into that. The other thing that the Home Sweet Home Act did back in 21 is gave some flexibility to how you could sell your food. So previously you couldn't sell it online and through the shipping, I believe. And now there's still maybe some restrictions there, but much more flexible on that, which again, if you have a high volume of sales coming through and now you can distribute it to a wider audience, My hope would be that you still take food safety seriously, even though you're not necessarily going to be inspected, and have some protocol for your home operation. But yeah, ultimately you just need to follow the labeling requirements and have a label like we see here in the example picture, and go ahead and follow anything else found in the statute there. And as long as you don't have any issues or complaints, you could survive as a cottage food operation. Okay. So now, really what we're trying to get at, and I'll talk about for the next 15-20 minutes, is our commercial food operations. So first, a shameless plug for us at UF, and it's not just me, it's other people who were here before me and started writing kind of series of documents, but there are quite a few guidance documents that start to spell out these different regulations. Because really, I'm just going to tell you what most of the regulations are, but we're not going to go too deep into them. So it starts with this document that we wrote a few years ago that basically covers the food regulatory agencies and basic steps. And that's what my next few slides kind of start with. And then again, those specific regulations like acidified foods, things like that. There's further guidance documents that you could find on our UF EDIS website, which is EDIS, to learn more, because I know we won't cover it all today. But continuing on that line, again, in our complex web of commercial food operations, it's certainly a wide range of businesses that fit into that third category. So that could be retail, more restaurant, caterer, food truck. That's something I didn't list would be like grocery store retail, convenience stores, things like that. Those will fit in, although we don't cover them too much in this talk. And then all the way up again to wholesale. So anyone that's wholesaling the product, selling it to somebody else, could be sold in a grocery store or wherever that outlet is. So we're covering everything in that category. It's good to review our federal food regulatory agencies. So again, that's the Food and Drug Administration, otherwise known as the FDA, and the United States Department of Agriculture, USDA, who these are the agencies that ultimately draft and come up and get those regulations that can then be used further in the states and adopted by those regulatory agencies in each state. And notice, going back to my slides a little bit ago, I left this slide out about USDA and meat and poultry and things like that. So that'll be a little bit different. And if you were going to do that type of facility in Florida, you would have to work with the USDA inspector that's probably based somewhere down here regionally, and go through that process. But I don't really deal with that audience too much. And if someone asked, I would send them to Jason, who introduced me, or Chad Carr. But just pointing out that that's another category there, since we're looking at USDA here. But then as far as the FDA, again, they kind of develop and send out the rest of those food regulations, which then brings us down to our Florida food regulatory agencies. Because just because you have a business that you're starting a business that falls within one of those FDA regulations, does not mean that you will get Inspector Joe from Washington, D.C. showing up at your door to inspect. Ultimately, you'll likely work with one of these two agencies, depending on your type of business. So that brings us to the Florida Department of Ag and Consumer Services, otherwise known as FDACS, and DBPR, which is Department of Business and Public Regulation. And so we'll get into each of those. And then there's the third one, Department of Health. I'll cover it in a later slide, but that's more for like schools and jails and things like that, like food service type. So not really my food entrepreneur audience that I was talking about earlier. But we'll cover those at the end of the other possibilities there. So let's get into what each does. And it looks like I started with DBPR. I know there's a DBPR rep on this call, so if I leave anything out, put it in the chat or call me out on it. But the DBPR, they, again, if you have a business type that's like restaurant, temporary, can be at a temporary event, food trucks, caterers, something along those lines. Most likely you will fall somewhere in this within this agency and have to ultimately register and pay their fees and work with them to become an inspected facility, again, under the DBPR. And so they will be implementing the food code. My example picture here says 2013. I'm thinking Florida is at 2017, but again, someone knows, put that in the chat. I believe they're on 2017 because each state can ultimately adopt whatever the latest food code is, but that takes time because we have some states that are like still on 09 or 2013, like I have here, and maybe some that are even earlier. I haven't looked at that list in a while. But ultimately, you'd have to follow whatever steps they need, which usually includes food manager training, and which can be done a few ways, but would be serve safe is the most example. So I was having a brain fart there. So it looks like in the chat we're having agreement 2017. So I was right. But I'd be curious to know if they plan to adopt the 2022 or newer one here in the next couple of years. But yeah, ultimately, if you're one of these DBPR type businesses, you would have to, again, follow these basic rules, follow the food code, and ultimately get inspected and begin operations that way. And that's pretty straightforward, actually, in my head. Which then brings us to FDACs, which is a tad more complex here. So I think I have maybe one or two slides on this, but doesn't do this service because each of these in their own right could be like, or are, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-day workshops. So we could do a month-long college course or semester-long college course just on all these regulations and what this looks like as far as the what they ultimately regulate across the board. So that's why I have a broader statement at the top, which says businesses must follow the appropriate regulation. So this again brings us back to like when I work with or meet an entrepreneur and they come to me and I say, what is your type of product? Do you have sales in the past? Is there a certain threshold that you've met with sales? How do you plan to sell it? Because if you're just going to use that food product in catering or something, then it may chunt you back to a catering license with DBPR, like we just covered. So it's dependent on a few things there, but ultimately it brings us down to kind of the web at the bottom. And here, again, I left out a little bit about the retail. So FDAX does do a lot of retail too, and that's more like grocery stores, convenience stores, like I said. And so a lot of those may still be following the food code or some sort of CGMPs. But then when I'm working with the people who are more processing for wholesale or something that's going to meet these regulations, it'll be one of these or potentially a bit of a combination there, depending on what they have going on. So that would be something like acidified and low acid canned foods. So if you were doing a salsa or hot sauce, barbecue sauce, something that's going to be canned to be shelf stable, where you're driving out the air and sealing it, or a low acid food, so canning something like a vegetable that's not been acidified, that's going to go on the shelves, then that would have to meet one of those regulations. And some of you may be aware, so then you'd have to work with the process authority. Register your business as a canning facility with the FDA. You have to take better process control school and a few other steps that I'm leaving out. And then something else in Florida, at least for those businesses, I believe they ask you to write a HACCP plan to support that implementation as well. So quite a few steps if you're an acidified and low acid canned food processor, or if you are one of these other types, such as juice. So if you are a juicer, 100% juice, you likely have to follow juice HACCP rules, or seafood HACCP if you're a seafood processor, or previously mentioned produce safety rule if you're on the farm side, or the preventive controls for human food rule, which let's point out again. Oh, I thought it was gonna, sorry about that. There we go. So again, I mentioned the Food Safety Modernization Act a while back. I know a lot of you have heard of this already, so we're just hopefully pointing out the overview here, which actually created it's 7 rules, right? It's 5 and 7 in my head. It's 5 more rules to this, so 7 total. So things like preventive controls for animal food, sanitary transport, potential adulteration, and whatever the other 2 are that I'm blanking on in my head. But those were all came about as part of the Food Safety Modernization Act, which has added more regulatory oversight from the federal level. But the preventive controls rule, again, that's kind of for everything else. It's almost created an umbrella over some of these other types of businesses that it's not that they weren't regulated before, it's just we didn't have necessarily this type of regulation at the federal level, asking them to make a preventive controls plan and so on. So again, previously we had juice HACCP, seafood HACCP, and HACCP for meat and poultry. That's not on this page. Those have been around since the 90s or early 2000s. Acidified and low acid canned foods, that's been around since the 70s or so. So those have all existed and still there. But then we have everything else that is now kind of falls into these categories. So could be regulated by the preventive controls rule, which that's new news to you, is scary. Ultimately, if you read the rule, then there's some thresholds there. So if you're under $1 million, under $1 million of annual sales, you're what's known as a qualified facility. And then there's some modified requirements there, which if you read the fine print, ultimately says do a hazard analysis, identify your preventive controls, and kind of do the same thing, but you wouldn't be subject to all the other subparts that ask you to write that actual food safety plan. And more importantly, it adds the language, you must follow local and state regulations and things like that. So that brings us to CGMPs, which is what people have been following for a long time. These have been updated somewhat into 21 CFR 117 to support the new preventive controls rule for human food. But also, as we know, CGMP is applicable to some of these other regulations, or really all of them. If you read acidified foods, it's going to have CGMP mentions in there, and the food code and everything else. So it all kind of fits together. So hopefully that explains the overview a little bit if for anyone who's new to the breakdown here. There are certainly some gray areas and crossover there. So like if you were an acidified food producer and you were above $1 million in sales, you still kind of have to do parts of the preventive controls rule beyond, because the acidified foods will take care of the biological, I believe, hazards, but you may have to do something beyond with the preventive controls rule. From what the way I read it, I have not had any acidified food producers that have reached that point yet, but that's the way the regulation reads. So yeah, hopefully that's a good overview there, and let's keep moving along so we can get to the food code stuff. I think most of you have maybe had some sort of CGMP exposure in the past, so we're not going to like lecture you on CGMPs again, just including them here as a refresher. So this includes following subsections like having personnel and training of personnel, your plant and grounds, sanitary operations and facilities and controls, so making sure that your facilities are set up in the proper order. You don't have toilet and bathroom right in the middle of your processing areas or something like that. You have good airflow, you have the right equipment, you have cleanable surfaces, and anything else. And so I'll just add to that there's documents published to help if you were building it out. There's FDACs, minimum construction standards that you could base a lot of that off of. And I know I'm missing a few CGMPs off this list too. I think I ran out of room on my slide, but it goes down to all the way to defect action levels, which always makes me think of taking classes in college and learning about that and talking about the filth and insects that were allowed in your food product. It's always fun to think back on those times. Okay, so before we transition, I just wanted to point out the other agencies that do potentially have some sort of oversight here. So apologies to Department of Health because I didn't really give them any glory, but they are really the third leg of the regulatory agencies in Florida. But their area is food service, like I said, the schools, detention facilities, and assisted living, or civic and fraternal organizations, bars and lounges that do not prepare food. So I don't really deal with any of that, but if that was your type of operation, that's who you work with. Then we have these other ones that I wasn't really aware of, but were pointed out. I think when we were putting some documents together a couple of years ago, that the Department of Children and Families, Elder Affairs, Agency for Persons with Disabilities, and Healthcare Administration. So each of them ultimately have some authority there, but that's again pretty particular to that type of operation. Okay. So that's it. Again, that was an incredibly brief overview, but and we certainly didn't cover everything, but hopefully you learned something, or at least it was a good refresher of how the breakdown happens in this state. So just give me a second to move this around. I don't see any questions in the chat, so we're going to transition now to the second part, which is updates to the 2022 FDA food code. And I'm certainly not a food code nerd. I'm certified in ServSafe and I'm very familiar with the food code, but like I don't sit there and distinctly know every single difference between every year. Like I do know some people out there that are able to do that, and that's quite impressive. What I did was look through. There's guidance documents available that the FDA has released a lot of guidance. There's a full 19-page document that we're not going to be able to cover every single little change in 20 minutes here, but I tried to pull out what I thought was the biggest thing that I thought relevant or seemed like a bigger change. Plus the Restaurant Association did have a webinar that I think you can still access online even after the fact, or if you can't, I might know someone who could find that for you. But I kind of looked at both of those and tried to figure out what I thought was most relevant. But certainly if you have a business that works with a particular part of this, happy to discuss and look a little deeper into each of these. So with that, again, the FDA food code was updated, and this was released, I believe December 28th was the date I saw, so just a little over 2 months ago. And as we previously mentioned, it takes time for each jurisdiction to ultimately enforce or adopt the newest food code and enforce. So I'm not sure how widespread this is at this point, but here are a few obvious changes that we noticed. So the biggest one, pretty straightforward. Y'all may be pretty aware that sesame has been added as an allergen. So we previously had 8 food considered food allergens, and they call it the big 8. So I guess we have the big 9 now. That was milk, egg, fish, shellfish, tree nuts, peanuts, wheat, soybeans, and sesame. Or sesame is now the 9th. I meant to add that later. But this isn't like breaking news. We knew this was coming. It's been added in the CFR as well. And it's not that like sesame has changed by any means. It's just I think there's been enough incidences in the last decade that they decided to add it in because again, enough people were being affected by that. But interestingly enough, like if you look at other countries, so if you're from Europe or Canada, you all have different allergen lists too. So you may say, well, I have something like mustard or sulfites, or I know there's other things on that list that I'm missing, but again, this is ultimately what the United States has decided. So it's particular to the United States, and then obviously each jurisdiction will decide that. And I see a question that just came in that says, is there a date which manufacturers have to adopt the 2022 food code? So that's going to be, again, that's like a lot of these will be dependent on your jurisdiction. So we have in the chat that Florida is still following the 2017 food code. So I don't know, because I don't work for the agencies that will adopt it, but if they have any idea, and Kyle's on the call and could add in the chat, maybe if he has any idea, but if not, it's the answer would be when the jurisdiction that you're in adopts the 2022 food code, and then your inspector asks you to follow that would be the answer to when you would be asked. So you probably have some time, but it's always best practice to, especially with something like sesame, if you know you have that in your operation and need to change some labeling or other things around, then best practice would be to get that rolling. So let's keep going. It did a little bit. And so that's language being updated again to say employees are properly trained in food safety, including allergy awareness as it relates to their assigned duties. I think there was something similar to that, if not exactly the same, that was already there. But now, as I understand, it's elaborated a little bit to say food allergy awareness includes describing foods identified as major food allergens and the symptoms that a major food allergen could cause in a sensitive individual who has an allergic reaction. So this seems to add, I'm not sure the right word, maybe some encouragement. It's kind of pushing the note that employees, like beyond the food manager, should receive some sort of training to ultimately have some bit of understanding and know the allergens that they're working with and things to look for in that regard. It seems to be the change there. Again, just giving maybe a little bit more responsibility or to the actual employees and so that they have that understanding. So that may tweak a little bit of the employee training programs. Furthermore, and again, I don't think all of this language changed, because I believe there was a statement previously about kind of labeling bulk foods, but obviously with our allergen labeling, things, sesame is added to that. So here to point that out. But if you go read the actual food code, the language is a bit, I think, broad. It just says like bulk food containers for purchase or something along those lines are required to be labeled for allergens. So that leaves leaves it up to interpretation a little bit. So that could include something like a salad bar. So notice the second note says any items in salad bars that contain sesame or sesame seeds could need to be labeled. I see the word could because, again, via the language and discussions that I heard, it really, again, comes back to your jurisdiction and how they interpret it and how they enforce it. And so certainly they're adding it in because it's important and they're trying to encourage it, but it seems to be dependent on your jurisdiction. But getting back to the sesame talk, certainly if you had a salad bar and had breadsticks with sesame seeds on or something, and you were previously labeling it for wheat and whatever else may be in there, now you need to add sesame. And really the food code is just kind of the basis. So even if we can't find the language in there that says you need to do something, it's going to be the best practice to add that in as a practice. And obviously that's, I think, what they're trying to encourage here by adding more language in like this. get it to advance. Okay, so I'm going to stop there on the allergen and sesame discussion, but certainly a big topic there in the food code and all across food regulations, because that's now in the CFR. Okay, so transitioning to a few of the other topics. So the hand washing water temperature has actually been changed as well. And so it's been lowered slightly. And the new temperature for your water temperature for hand washing sink is at least 29.4 degrees Celsius or 85 degrees F. And that is to be a little bit more uniform and correspond with the Uniform Plumbing Code range. And I think what happened here is there's been some disagreements maybe over the years, but people often think, we need hotter water to be able to control contamination on hands, which sounds okay, but if you look at the science and think about what temperature the water would actually have to be to be a sanitizing agent on hands, it would basically scald people's hands off. And I know some people can handle hot water. My hands are sensitive, so I don't like touching hot things, but like my mother-in-law, she can pick up an incredibly hot pan and be okay, but still I think her hands would be scalded. And what we're pointing out here is still at 85 degrees, the science supports, and really the temperature doesn't matter too much. It's more about using proper soap and that actual hand washing procedure of scrubbing your hands together and then washing the contamination away that could be there. So hopefully this helps settle some of the debate on that and makes it a little bit more uniform across the board. But the hand washing water temperature has been updated. Pets in outdoor dining areas, and for those of you who know me, that is in fact my dog there in our outdoor dining area on our back porch. But I'll add the note that we do not have a registered food processing facility in our home. So, but it's just an example picture. But again, the way I understand it, this was not addressed in previously food codes. So I think it comes back again to each jurisdiction's interpretation and what they choose or have chosen to enforce over the years. I know certainly when we go out, I see dogs on the patios of those places all the time, and sometimes even outside. And I'm not sure if they're following the rules or not, because it depends on their inspector or what rule they're following. But what this does is at least add in some language to I guess show that this is happening. They're basically admitting that this is happening and we need to do something about it or address it. So notice I wrote the words written in italics. So I thought that was an interesting note. Was if you read the actual food code, this statement written here is written in italics, meaning that it's not actually a rule. I'm not sure the right word here. I want to say suggestion, but that doesn't feel right. But again, ultimately they've added it in to show that they know that this is happening. And again, it's going to come back to each jurisdiction and how they choose to enforce that. But I think a step in the right direction to at least add language in. Similarly with food donation, this statement seemed to previously not be there. And so food donation has probably been happening. And perhaps the jurisdiction or agency has, I think the CFR even addresses this in other places. So hopefully makes it a little bit more uniform with the CFR and across other regulations. But they've added a statement in here that says food stored, prepared, packaged, displayed, and labeled in accordance to the law, and this code may be offered for donation. So yeah, ultimately the food donation has been happening and will continue to, and they have just added in the language to ultimately show that you should think about it, and maybe there will be some sort of requirement depending on where you're located. But I think important that they're starting to address this, because obviously food donation is a good option for a lot of businesses to limit food waste. Obviously, it could be beneficial for a lot of parties there. But if there are any issues there, who are you donating it to? Is it a population that, elderly, or someone that may have a compromised immune system where we could have an issue, or something else. So just a few things to think about there. But again, ultimately, the food donation, they've just added in this statement here to show that it's happening and that you should think about it. So I see a question in the chat. I'll go ahead and back up because it's asking about service dogs. So what about pets, service dogs, and retail groceries we'll call supermarkets? So I believe if it's a service dog, then there's nothing you can do to keep them out. That's the way the law reads, I believe. I'm not sure. I don't think, maybe that's in the food code and I just don't know where it is. But I again, if it's a service dog, you can't take their service dog away. But if you were going to allow a service dog, or if you know that they're service dogs, what you can do is make sure that they're not in the areas where like food is being processed and heightening that risk. And something else to add to that, I mean, there is some science out there that I think would support, especially in those outdoor areas, that basically show the risk is negligible. Again, if you started allowing pets back into the kitchen and had a pack of dogs back in your kitchen, then ultimately you could have some issues then. Okay, so I see a few more questions. I'm going to get through the last couple ones, and then we should have some time at the end where we can discuss anything else. I think that'll work. So we will get to all you who are piping in there. Now I can't get my slides to advance. Okay, so ready to eat food definition has changed a little bit slightly. And the way, again, this one I'm kind of stealing from the webinar again. What they were saying was ultimately, I think there's places in the CFR where you may have a food product, and in lieu of, controlling a hazard, as long as you are labeling that product, so you label that product saying it has to be, if we haven't processed to control a hazard, blah, 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 but it needs to be cooked to this internal temperature, something along those lines. So if that's the case, now on the back end, we need something to put a little bit more responsibility on the restaurant. So what this is saying, that if that food product that says something like that is used, then it's not considered a ready-to-eat food, and again, needs to be processed in some way or have some sort of intervention there to make sure that it's not leading to an issue. So the example they used was frozen peas on a salad bar. So again, if you're going to use those frozen peas, they would have to go, if it has that statement on there that we know, you would have to work that out. And I think that's probably something that's already happening. I would hope that, at least. But now the language in the food code has just been updated to make that a little bit more clear. Okay. So next little topic here was intact and mechanically tenderized meat. So here the definition was just updated to include a few other things. And again, this is another one where I think maybe the meat, the USDA stuff and places in the CFR had similar definitions, and the food code just left a few things out, and they added it in to make it a little bit more uniform across the board. So we can have agreement between different regulations. So notice for intact meat, it's adding that's meat that has not undergone various things, including now vacuum tumbling and cubing and pounding. So those words have been added in. And then the second bullet talks about mechanically tenderized meat, and here it has added the word injection in. So again, this was strictly, I think, to make it a little bit more agreement with where it's written in the CFR and other regulations. Okay, I think, yeah, so one more slide, and I apologize. I had a few more details written on these, and I made these yesterday afternoon at my office. Now I'm at home, and for whatever reason, iCloud dropped the slides that I updated. So 30 minutes ago, I had a slight panic, but I just added these in because I think they're somewhat subtle changes. If anyone here works more with that, I'd love to hear further discussion on it about what they think, but there have been some updates as far as the language and verbiage used for the cook chill processes and time as a public health control. So that's kind of getting into, you know, having something at a certain temperature, and it can be in this range for 4 hours or whatever's written in the code before it needs to be at this temperature for cook chill cooking and getting it down to a certain temperature. So I threw it on here because I know there's been some update here, but to me, it wasn't obvious what those changes were. They seemed subtle to me, but I threw them on with the recommendation that if you are working in a restaurant or business that's using those processes, please go read what the updates were and make sure that you are following that. So I'm just going to leave it at that, but just know that that is, those were also areas called out for changes to the new food code. And so I think that's it for my slides. Let me check though. Yeah, so that's it. And here's my contact if there are any questions, but we do have, I think, 10 or so minutes left, so we can have some discussion and look at the questions that may be remaining in the chat. So I've lost my chat bar, so give me a minute to find that out, or one of the
That's okay.
people can jump in and help me out.
I'll jump in and help you out. This is Rachel. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for that interesting presentation. I think that's a pretty good summary of all the regulations that a food business could be required to comply with within the state of Florida. So we did have some questions come in the chat box, and I'll just start with at the top where, so you've already answered the question about pets and service dogs in the grocery area. So the next question that came in was, where does the manufacture of gummy products fall under? Are they confectionery goods or dietary supplements? Are there HACCP protocols for this kind of industry? The question is asking where a gummy product would fall under.
Gummy? I would think that's, well, what's in the gummy? Maybe I could see that somewhere else, but a gummy, anything like that, should fall under just your CGMPs and potentially preventive controls, if you were reaching that point. So I would think that you would just work with FDAC. So that would not necessarily be HACCP. That would be a preventive controls, which we didn't get too much into the weeds there, but is HACCP-like, is similar. It's just taking it a step further. So you now have to address sanitation, supply chain, and allergen things beyond your process controls. Now, again, you may have depending on what level you're working at there, you may have some sort of third party or buyer requirement there that may ask for a HACCP-like standards. I haven't done any work with gummy products. I haven't had any entrepreneurs come to me with that, so I don't probably have a great answer for if there's a perfect protocol for that. That is where I think it would fall.
All right, thank you. The next question that came in is, how does food donation affect restaurants and discarded food from services like that?
How does it affect the restaurant?
Yes, so it says, how does food donation affect restaurant and discarded food from services like that? So I think they're asking about what different things would a restaurant need to do if they're going to be donating food?
Uh, I'm not totally sure on that because I've worked with a restaurant who is doing that. I would imagine if it's something you plan to do a lot, I would just run it by your inspector, which if your restaurant should be through DVPR, and I know if DVPR is still on the call, maybe they have a protocol that they run through, maybe not, since it wasn't previously addressed in the older food codes. But yeah, again, the people I work with, my goal is always let's find who the right person is who's going to be an inspector in your agency, and then they can give you the more specific answers like that. So if the question is just what do I need to do to successfully get these donations out without getting in trouble, then I would just run it by who that inspector is and make sure that they're good with what you're planning to do.
Thank you. Oh, we just had one.
Yeah, Kyle works for DVPR, so that's who I was talking to. Maybe he has added to. So yeah,
Okay.
he's saying as long as they follow the food code requirements and the product is still wholesome, can be donated. So, and then yeah, so that's a great point. I was going to add that in about the third party donation because like a year and a half ago, my sister-in-law was getting married, and that was when I think Delta, one of the COVID strains, like heated back up. So all these people who were invited from New York couldn't make it to her wedding. Well, then we had all this extra food that we had paid for and couldn't get back. And this was actually in Jacksonville. And so my wife started calling places in Jacksonville trying to donate it, but it was actually incredibly difficult because a lot of them had further requirements or just wouldn't accept it because of whatever reason. So that actually might be the bigger holdup there, I would think.
So the holdup could be the place that's receiving the donation may have their own standards.
No, that was like meals from a wedding. So if you're donating other types of foods, it might be completely different, but just an example that I saw firsthand.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to encourage people to put their questions in the chat so we can make sure we get all the questions answered. But I'm going to ask a question about cottage food regulations. So you mentioned that FDACs, if they need to, they will come and inspect your actual home kitchen if you're doing cottage foods from your home kitchen. Are those notified inspections or are those unannounced?
I think they probably, from what I've heard, they notify them. But that's a question for, there's a fellow who works for FX named Steve Carmody, and he's not on the call, right? I put him on the spot, but he kind of handles that stuff. And I've asked him the question before. I say, have you ever done that? Like, what's the scenario where it gets so bad that FX goes in? And they do it, but I believe they probably call them and say, we're on our way, we're coming. So it's notified, but it's also like, we're on our way now or very soon.
So potentially they're getting some notice if an FDAC inspector is coming, but not.
I could be completely wrong because I don't work for FDAC, so I don't want to say yes or no. If you want the actual answer, we can shoot an email to Steve and see. But I think to reach that point, it's pretty unlikely. Like you'd have to be doing something really wrong or have a public enemy who's trying to take you down. So I think unlikely, but from what I hear, if there's a complaint or something like that, FDACS does have the authority to come and I think they would notify you, but we can ask Steve if we want the official answer.
All right, thanks. Next question would be about, you talked about there's a training update in the 2022 food code. And I was wondering if there's any specific requirements around that training, or can it just be something that the company or business itself develops and delivers in-house?
Yes, I think that remains to be seen if it changes like the Serve Safe and Safe Staff curricula. I don't think they've made any changes yet, but I think what the food code is encouraging with that language is that you do something a little bit more in-house to like make sure that your employees are aware. Maybe that'll become a little bit more streamlined if they do update that training, but like it's not necessarily well defined that you have to go train this and this and this like right now or whenever that food code's adopted. But I would think that the Restaurant Association, the Serve Safe people are addressing that and then probably will update the training at some point.
All right, thank you. Are there any more questions to be posted in the chat?
Sure, I'll just added a comment, it looks like.
Okay, so he's saying at Red Lobster, we donate excess food. A few things that they consider would be proper storage to prevent contamination, proper cooling for obvious reasons, and then proper labeling as required. So I guess he's listing out what they do as a company to make sure that when they donate food, that it remains safe and wholesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing.
All right, if there's no more questions, I will go ahead and wrap up. So I want to say thank you to Matt Krug for his webinar today. It was very much appreciated by FAFP, and hopefully everyone enjoyed it. Do keep in mind that we also have our upcoming annual education conference where we will have many more speakers and lots more to learn. That happens in May. And registration is open on our website. So go ahead and check out our website at fafp.net for more information on the annual education conference. And again, thank you to Matt for his webinar today. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel, and thank you all for listening in, and then definitely reach out if you have any questions.